Hello, North Central Washington, and welcome to Networked. I'm your host, Jenny Rojanasa-Tien, and it is a pleasure to be back in the NCW Life studio on air with you today. I'm really excited about today's guest, Hans Mulders with Chelan Hospitality, Inc. He's going to share about his entrepreneurial journey, his thoughts on hospitality, and give some advice for those looking to build or start a business. Don't go far. We'll be right back. And welcome to Network TV. We're here today with Hans Mulders from Chelan Hospitality. Thank you so much for coming on air.
Thank you for having me. This is quite a privilege.
Well, I'm excited. You and I just got introduced this past year.
Right.
And so this is a thrill for me to sit down and spend some more time learning about you and your background and businesses. But first, for our community watching today, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story and your journey before you arriving into North Central Washington.
I know it's been it's been quite a journey. I'm a world traveler, as they say. So my dad was an engineer who did peace projects throughout the world, and when I was born, a couple of months after that, we moved to Ethiopia, of all places. There were 60 families, 3 compounds with 60 families. And we had sugar plantations and the big factories there that would produce the sugar. So I grew up there until I was 12. And then my sister and I flew back by ourselves because my dad had a job lined up in the Netherlands and flew back by himself, by themselves. And we stayed behind with the parents of my best friend. And that was a great time, by the way. So you're away from your parents, nobody's checking up on you. So we lived there for 11 years, went back to the Netherlands because my parents would have 3 kids in boarding school and it was just unaffordable at the time. And even today it would be unaffordable. Came back, went to high school. I wanted to do what my dad did. So, I'm going to be an engineer. Went to engineering school. God, I hated it. Was not for me. The school I went to was something like 400 students, and of the 400, there were 4 women and the rest were men. Wow. And it was way too much testosterone for me. So I said, I got to get out of here. And at the time, I was working as a waiter in a roadside restaurant in the Netherlands and loved it. I still say to this day that that's probably the best job I ever had. From pure fun, learning about logistics, because what is waiting tables is logistics. And really interested in food and things like that. So it was like really something I go okay, this is nice. So I told my parents, quitting school, I'm gonna work as a waiter.
And I'm sure they loved that.
My dad, super excited, yeah. And by the way, I want to put a caveat in here. There's nothing wrong with waiting tables. And there's nothing wrong with waiting tables as a career either. Right? Because every job has value, every human has value. I believe that. I try to live my life to that principle. But my parents, education is big in my family. You've got to get educated. So about, 6 months later, my dad, we're sitting talking and he says, do you really want to do this the rest of your life? And I go, well, I definitely want to be in this industry. And he said, well, why don't you go to the hotel school? I'm like, okay, I'll go to the hotel school. So off I went, and I was in high school. I graduated with the second lowest score possible. Like in America, I would have been a total failure. I would not have been able to achieve what I achieved because I would have never been able to get in that school. Because my grades were so horrid that they would have said, yeah, no, this guy's too stupid. He can't go to school here. Fortunately, in the Netherlands, every school you go to, you got a test in those days. And if you pass the test, you could go to the school. Yeah. So I did well on that test, I guess. Went to hotel school. Best time of my life, like hands down. It was an incredible experience. The camaraderie, the education part, the basic concepts of the hospitality industry, which you don't often talk about. You hear nobody talk about that. But how do you fill a room? How do you fill a seat? All of those kinds of questions. How do you control your expenses? Blah 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 blah. So after I was done, I had a 1-year practical period that I had to go to work for a company. And I went to Frankfurt, worked for the Holiday Inn Corporation there, a little bit north of Frankfurt, a little town called Sulzbach am Taunus. I still speak German. and did my internship there, and they liked what I did, so they offered me a job. And then I got a new boss, and he had come through a program that was sponsored by Bayer Aspirin to exchange students all over the world. So they had a big shindig where you had to show up there, and they would interview you, and they would give you this list of questions, like hundreds of them, from what I remember. And you had to pass that. And in the questions, for instance, there were things like, okay, when you go to America and a lady walks down the street and her hat blows off, what do you do?
Wow.
Right. Okay, well, I would pick up the hat and I would run after her and say, oh my gosh, your hat dropped. And okay, that was the right answer, I guess.
Yes.
But like questions like that, just about regular human interactions, because, Americans' culture are different than Europeans, obviously. So they wanted to make sure that we would fit in properly. And so on June 4th, 1984, I landed in New York. Got promptly ripped off by a cab driver who charged me $100 to go from Kennedy Airport to downtown Manhattan. That should have cost $35. And $100 in those days was 300 guilders, and 300 guilders was a 2-week salary. So that was like a boatload of money.
Right.
And so I went to the 7-week Cornell program and had an amazing experience there.
And what I love about what you said, I want to circle back to it, about there's every person, every role has value.
Mm-hmm.
I really love you said that. And the hospitality industry has incredible careers
Yeah.
at every pathway.
Yeah.
But one of the best things is being able to share what you love with people. Being in the hospitality business myself, I think that's one of the biggest joys.
It is. I years ago, my first job in the United States was in Santa Rosa, California. With the then Sheraton Round Inn, which has since burned to the ground in that big fire that happened. Was a Hilton at that time, but I had the GM there, and he asked me one day, he said, "Hans, why are you in this industry?" And it kind of caught me off guard, and I was like, "I don't know. I enjoy the work. I like the people. Blah blah. No. Why are you in this industry?" And he said, "You don't have to answer me now. Just think about it and come back to me when you have an answer." So a couple of days, and I really did some serious thinking about that. Like, why do I like this so much? And for me, our industry, no matter whether you go for a business conference, whether you go for leisure travel, whatever your reason is to have to stay with us, when you arrive, you're likely somewhat stressed, right? You've been working, you have to drive there, you have to pack your suitcase, you have to do all these things that kind of add stressors to your life. Then when you come with us, if we do our jobs right, then you leave with less stressful than you were when you came, And so for me, that's what a doctor does, right? You heal people to an extent. So I said to him, I said, I think we're like doctors. And he started laughing so hard. He goes, "Oh my God, okay, I've never heard this one. Tell me why."
Right.
So then I told him, of course, what I just told you. And he goes, "Oh my God, I've never even looked at it that way." And that is whether you're a restaurant server, whether you're a restaurant cook, whether you're a McDonald's fry cook, it doesn't matter. You contribute to making people's lives easier. And that has value. It has lots of value. So for me, that's the impetus why I ultimately went back to the hotel, because I went out of it for a little bit in one of my entrepreneurial jaunts.
Yes.
So
it's not a straight line.
It's not a straight line.
Right.
No.
Well, we have to head out to a commercial here in just a few minutes, but I'd love to kind of fast forward. When did you get to the Pacific Northwest? What brought you up and then ultimately into Leavenworth?
So this is a very circuitous route. Right. So I started in New York. Moved to California, moved to Texas, moved to Florida, moved back to Texas, moved to New Jersey, and then came here. And ultimately, the reason why we're here is when 2008 and 9 happened, the financial collapse. I was the managing director of a very large resort in southern New Jersey with 2 championship golf courses, a ton of meeting space, lots of rooms. And I've been in that job for maybe 5 or 6 months when all hell broke loose. And I was tasked to lay off 178 people. Wow. And that experience changed me forever. Like that was the most painful thing I've ever done in my life. I looked people in the eyes that I knew would not be able to pay their rent next month. And I had to tell them that I had no job for them. And the side story is that the company had said, "Hey, I called him and said, listen, when I do this, it's game over for me here. Like, I can't stay here, because everybody will hate me. No worries. We've got you. And 3 months later, they came and said, well, Hans, you've been here and it's not working because the staff doesn't respect you anymore. I'm like, well, yeah, we knew that coming. Right. So we parted ways and I drove home and I said to my wife, I will never, ever, ever do that again for a millionaire. Like there were millionaires that owned that hotel and they made me lay off 178 people who didn't have anything. I found it so grotesque that I said, okay, I'm going to do my own thing. I went home. I said to my wife, we're selling everything here. We're moving. I'm buying business. And it was not like I said that. Like, it was a discussion, because it's not that my wife doesn't have a voice in those decisions. But she understood, intuitively. She knew I was not designed to do this kind of like inhumane. I just couldn't do it. It's not in me. And so she said, well, if we're going to go have our own business, then we're going to go. You can look from San Francisco to the Canadian border, but we're back on the West Coast. we are not staying, in the East Coast or Central America or Middle America. We're not going there. So I said, okay, no problem. So I started looking. Like, I looked at 150 hotels maybe on paper, and then by happenstance, this hotel in Chelan shows up, and I think, oh my God, this is fantastic. So we made an offer on that, came to an agreement, and the seller immediately got cold feet, like he didn't really want to sell it. And we met with him, talked to him a bunch of times, and he was like, okay, I'll sell it. But we couldn't get financing. So, because we had only very little down payment, and we needed the seller to carry a contract. So we met with People's Bank here, and shout out to People's Bank. They got us started in our business, lent us the money to buy the hotel, and then all of a sudden the seller said, no, you're being a month late, I'm not selling it anymore. So we're like, oh my God, what are we going to do now? This happened while we're still living in New Jersey. Wow. So I said to my wife, what do you want to do? And she said, well, why don't we just move? We'll go live with my dad, who lives in Manson, who lived in Manson at the time, and from there we'll figure out what we're going to do. We'll put all our stuff in storage, and we'll go.
Well, we're going to have to make the audience wait here to hear the next part. Right. And as we head out to commercial break, I know, right? Okay, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here at the NCW Life Studio. We are back with Hans Mulders. I've been having so much fun with you, Hans. You are a great storyteller. We were talking off air about that. And more than being, sharing your story and being a great storyteller, just such a good human. The last segment talking about laying off people and the really real impacts of recessions and the economy and how important staff is in any organization.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
So let's not leave our audience hanging. Tell us, you moved out to Manson, didn't have the business lined up, and fast forward, what unfolded? Obviously, you have a business here now.
Yes, we do. Yes. So we're driving cross country. The truck has left. It's on its way. We drive cross country. 2 cars, 2 cats. My daughter, who is 12 at the time, and cars packed full of stuff. And I get a call from the broker who was involved in the sale in Manson that, hey, Hans, did you buy something already? I said, no, not yet. I'm looking at 3 hotels that I want to make an offer on and see if I can get them. And he said, oh, don't buy anything yet. There's a place for sale in Leavenworth. And are you familiar with Leavenworth? No, I've heard of it, but I've never been there. No idea. He goes, well, you need to go see it before you buy that hotel. I promise you'll love it. So it's like, okay. So on August 1st, 2010, I go see the Obertel in Leavenworth. And the couple that owned it had listed it kind of quietly for sale. It wasn't universally known. And I walked in, and I have this knack for looking at space and understanding the possibility intuitively, almost immediately. Like I can see that somehow. I don't know why, but so we got a deal. And the only reason why I was able to buy that hotel is because the seller was prepared to give me a $700,000 second note. Like, otherwise we would not have been able to buy that hotel. Because financing is huge. Yeah. We won't be able to fully go into that this episode, but yeah, being able to finance a business purchase. In 2010, the banks were terrified. Like, everybody was terrified, right? So it was a perfect time to buy a business. By the way, that's what you want your audience to walk away with. Now is the time to invest in the stock market if you haven't already. You can't get panicked by the dips, right? You have to survive the dips. So everything that we do is, the foundation is survive the dip, because the dip's going to come. So I looked at the hotel. We were immediately like, oh my God, I absolutely love this. Bought it. Started a company called Chelan Hospitality Inc. Bought the Obertal Inn and operated it for a few years. And we immediately increased business. I don't know if it was my genius or just by happenstance, but that hotel did about $500,000 in revenue when we bought it, and in year 2 it did $780,000. So huge increase, and that also meant more money in our pockets, right? And based on my experience in New Jersey, my wife and I said, how do we figure out to reward the people that actually made this happen? Because see, without me, this business will continue. But without my employees, that business would be dead. Any business, you have no employees, you're dead. Right. So if you don't understand that fundamental aspect of business, then you'll never treat your employees well. You will never look at them as partners. You will never look at them as assets, right? When I spend money training an employee, I've invested in an employee. That makes that employee an asset. So if that employee leaves, everything that I've taught them goes to somebody else's productivity. Right. So we bought the Obertal Inn. Then in 2013, they were building 3 townhouses. They were building 4 townhouses across the street with a restaurant on the bottom, right across from the hotel. And I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, this is kind of cool. We should buy those and do vacation rentals in there. And so we went to the bank and said, hey, we don't have any money anymore because it's all in the hotel. Right. But we've increased business in the hotel by a lot. Can you do a new appraisal and see if we can buy this with no down payment? So they did, and we qualified. So we bought those 3 apartments, and those 3 little apartments consistently generated, I don't know, something like $210,000 a year in the beginning. Like they were massively profitable right from day one. But when I signed that loan document right afterwards, I didn't run to the bathroom because I didn't seem like an ass. Sorry, but like a donkey. but went to the bathroom and threw up. Oh. I was like completely terrified. And it's worked out incredibly well. As a matter of fact, we just sold all 3 apartments to buy a bigger building in town and made an enormous return on 0 investment, basically.
But keep leveraging the existing business to build and then do another.
Now, leveraging is a scary thing because I'm all for leveraging, right? But for me, when I reach a loan to value ratio, an LTV ratio of roughly 55%, I don't want to borrow anymore. I may go to 58 or 60%, but above 60, I get a little terrified. Because at some point, your interest rates are rising right now. Right. Commercial loans, they don't give you a 30-year fixed, right? You get a 3-year fixed, a 5-year fixed, a 7-year fixed, or whatever. So,
and those rates have always been higher than a traditional mortgage that you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So leverage, yes, but leverage, thinking about it, and don't look at the diamonds only, because underneath there is a lot of coal. You gotta make sure that you figure out how to get to the diamond and not the coal. And then so then we bought those. Then we bought the garden house, which is a little house. And as we're building these that we bought, we get called by somebody who says, hey, we notice you always have cars in front of your vacation rentals. Like, what kind of revenues do you do? What kind of occupancy? So I share information pretty freely, like I'm not worried. Yeah. And he goes, holy cow, I own this little house there. Do you want to manage that for me? Oh yeah, sure, I'll manage that for you. So we started this management company for vacation rentals. And that's grown where we now manage / own 26, I think, units that we manage for other people. And that business has really taken off. Like we are generating revenues there that we would have not foreseen easily.
Well, your energy is contagious. Huh? It's so much fun talking to you. Very inspiring to see the story. As we wind down today, though, you did have some advice for entrepreneurs, and I want to make sure we slide that in. So you can't reveal the secret sauce of how you do the hospitality group, but what would you say to an entrepreneur or someone who desires to be an entrepreneur about your management philosophy?
Right. Okay, where's the camera? Where do I look? It's all your fault. Yes. So I worked for Horst Schulze, who put Ritz-Carlton on the map. A very famous hotelier. Service for him was everything. Like, it's all about the service. His big favorite thing was, the customers don't come here to work. You are here to work. So don't make the customers do any work. We forget that. A big corporation forget that. Like, they make the customers jump through hoops to get what they want. So he said at one point in time, he said, listen, there's only 5 reasons why work doesn't get done. The employee doesn't know it has to be done. That's a communications issue. That's your fault. The employee doesn't know how to do the job. That's a training issue. That's also your fault. The employee doesn't have the supplies, equipment, or whatever it needs to get the job done. Well, that's also your fault because you're responsible for making sure they have all that stuff. The employee lacks the mental acuity to learn how to do the job. Well, that's also your fault because you hired the person and you didn't vet them enough in the interviewing process that you could figure out that they couldn't learn how to do the job. And by the way, those people, if I hire people like that, and I have many times, I will work with them to the nth degree. Like I will bend over backwards to accommodate them, to help them, to work with them, to teach them, to be patient with them. Those are the weakest members of society, and those we should particularly take care of. And the last one is that the employee doesn't want to do it, right? Well, that's also my fault because I hired them, right? So at the end of the day, yes, the last two, the employee doesn't want to do it. That's relatively easy for me to decide if I want to move forward with this employee. I might ask that employee to be successful elsewhere. That's just hey, listen, this is not working. Let me help you find another job.
But it's still all on you. It's still
at the end of the day, right? You are responsible for all 5 of those things.
Right.
So it's so many entrepreneurs, they blame external factors for the misery. Now, are there external factors? Yes, of course there are external factors. But at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, it is your job to look beyond 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. I have a plan for 5 years down the road. What are we going to do? What does this business look like in 5 years? I'm 64 this year. Maybe I'll be dead by then. Who knows? But but to me, you as an employer, you cannot look at your employees and say to them, oh, you're only here to make me rich. Like our minimum wage this year is $17.25 an hour. We pay, when we make 90% of our revenue budget, we begin paying bonuses based on the number of hours that you worked in that month. And it goes all the way up to $2 an hour extra. We give raises every single year. We give bonuses every single year. We pay 3 weeks vacation. We match 6% 401k savings for our employees. All of those things, if I don't do them, it would save me $300,000 a year. That would go in my pocket. But to me, that's insane. I'm greedy too, don't get me wrong. I like money. I love what money does for me, right? But to me, when I see people that work for me every single day and they cannot afford to either buy a car or put their kid through college, well, that's impossible for anybody. Yeah. But that's a crime. Yeah. I look at that as a crime. And I'm not some socialist dimwit, although I do have socialist tendencies, I guess, right?
Well, you invest in employees, and I think that's been like this theme of today of what you've shared with us. And Hans, we're going to have you back on air because it's been so fun. We do have to wrap up, but look to this man for some inspiration on being a great leader and investing in team. And thank you so much for being on air today.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Awesome.
Since 1999, NCW Tech Alliance has served as our regional hub for technology innovation. As a 501c3, their nonprofit mission is to connect people and technology resources to create a thriving community. You can network with the team and guests from today's show by visiting them at www.ncwtech.org.